What is good, everybody? Hello, hello. A little light on the subject. I got a blanket here because it is freezing. It literally in Texas went from 80-degree days to 38 degrees overnight. So I'm like, where are all the warm things? Oh, side note. Today, I really want to talk. This is a message for the ladies, although if there's men here, you can listen to this too and likely benefit. So just bring a humble attitude and a willingness to just receive what really speaks to you right here and right now. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things to really consider when it comes to independence. I'm calling this a spin on independence because I believe that that's often a personal definition. And we all have different ways that we express or that we believe independence is manifested in our lives. But I do think that these are some solid pointers, particularly for young ladies in their 20s and going into their future, whether they are single and considering a partner, they're just considering their career and their purpose, their destiny, just a future in general, or if you're in your 30s, or if you're reevaluating your life after divorce, for example. These are really, really strong pointers to have in your back pocket. These are things to be cultivating, to be checking in on constantly, to really make sure that you are truly maintaining your independence in a healthy manner. Okay, so the first one is money. The first one is money. And I know that money can be a sensitive topic for some, and it could be a scary topic for others. It could be a really easy topic for others. It's the whole gamut. However, managing money, so knowing how to earn money, how to produce money, how to manage money, how to multiply money, these are all things that need not have a lot of emotion connected to them, and they're very important, and they're particularly important when it comes to your not only livelihood and your basic needs being met, right? Money is that. However, it's also important in connection to your purpose and expansion into that purpose, because we are blessed to be a blessing. And so we can't receive more if we don't steward well what we have. So if we're given little, when we steward that well, we can step into much, but we're not just given much and expected to know how to handle that. And oftentimes we're given a lot of opportunities to manage and steward other people's money, whether that's at a job, a corporate job, whether that's at a foundation, whether that's just being in an administrative position of some kind, whether that's being in sales. You learn how to move money around. You learn about the exchange. You learn about the economy, and that can really apply to a venture later on. Maybe you run your own organization. Maybe you build a business of some kind, but knowing how to earn, to produce, to create income, how to steward that money, your finances well. This is beyond budgeting, okay? And how to multiply money is very, very important. And I've seen it a lot of times where that is an area potentially of insecurity for a woman. And so she wants to connect to a man because a man is often associated with being a provider. So as long as I can connect to a provider, for example, then I never have to figure that out for myself. That is a plan for failure. You always want to be able to have a plan for yourself, because here's two things. One, if there were something to happen in that relationship, an unforeseen event of some kind, right? Where would you be? Right? You would have to start over, and you would have to learn those things if you were suddenly put into a situation where you had to, right? Or another perspective, what if with your partner, you needed to step in and be a provider in a season, because there's different seasons, right? What if you needed to do that? Would you be able to? Would you be able to? So this is something that you want to be able to do independent of anyone that you're connected to, right? And God will guide and establish your steps. It is God who gives us the power to get wealth, right? Every good and perfect gift is from above. So this is something that you can't just use the excuse of, well, I don't know how, or I wasn't given that education, or I don't know the first step to take. God will guide and he will also provide. But you've got to be willing to learn it and do the work. There's God's part, but there's also your part. And there's levels to this, right? So the first level could be with starting to steward well what you've been given. How are you doing with your own resources that you've been given? Are you taking care of your living space, your home? Are you taking care of a vehicle? Are you taking care of the clothes that you have? Are you taking care of your body and the food and the resources that you have? Are you taking care of other people's resources? Everything that's been given to you to have influence with, are you stewarding it well? Are you stewarding it well? Are you managing it with excellence, or are there areas to change, to make some adjustments? If you look at your bank account statement, how are you doing? Where are funds going out? Are funds going out greater than they're coming in? What are the funds going to, right? How can you adjust things to really steward well what you've been given? Knowing how to manage your income, how to steward it well, and how to multiply it, very, very important. And you can't let lack of knowledge be a block. Get a mentor, get a really good accountant, take financial classes, learn this information. So important. Put yourself in situations where you can learn this information. Will it be uncomfortable? Yes. But the worst thing would be in situations where you let excuses hold you back, when you could absolutely learn and get stronger in these areas. So learn how to manage money for yourself. Build your own income. Steward it well. Multiply it. Do that. Apart from a partner, do that and be independent in that. So important, okay? And raise daughters to do that too, all right? Second one is, and I know that this one's probably gonna sound interesting, but take it with a grain of salt, okay? So this one is age gracefully. Age gracefully. Now, I know if you're in your 20s, or even if you're in your 30s or early 40s, maybe you think, well, that's weird. But here's the thing. I know some people in their 20s. I know some people in their 30s. I know some people in their 40s and beyond that act way older than they are, and not in a good way, right? There isn't this youthfulness. There's not this playfulness. There's not this joy. There's this seriousness. There's this heaviness. There's this negativity. And you want to age gracefully, right? Like there's some things that we just can't resist. And aging, maturing, that's actually a really good thing, right? But an age is something that you can't put a number on, right? And this energy, this vibrance, this presence, this enthusiasm that you have, this expectancy that you have, this hope that you have, this lightness of being that you have is such a beautiful gift, right? And what a testament to God working in your life when you've been through some really crazy things, but you look nothing like what you walk through. You still have joy. You still have this really strong presence about you. You just are very engaging and encouraging and uplifting. Like, where does that come from, right? That is somebody that, and you could meet people that are, way older than you that have that. And you're like, oh my good, like, what is my excuse? Like, literally, right? So learn how to age gracefully. And there's some things that you can do now to start focusing on that. So one is, we are transformed by the renewing of our mind. So stay current in doing that. Have a daily practice of renewing your mind, right? Don't get caught up in the ways and in the patterns of the world. Don't get just sucked into the news or sucked into what's happening around you, or some heaviness that's going on at work, or surround yourself with people that really aren't in step with where you're headed. Eliminate that kind of stuff and really be transformed by the renewing of your mind every day. Set aside time to renew your mind, to replace thoughts of lack, of limitation, of insecurity, of unbelief, of doubt, of fear, of anxiety, whatever that is not of God. So renew your mind. Also, have your own self-care practices, whatever that is for you, whether that is an exercise routine, whether that is a visualization and meditation or prophetic soaking practice, whether that is some prayer time, whether that's journaling, whether it's reading, just having some self-care practices. It could be stretching, it could be taking a bath, it could be going for walks around your neighborhood and just really getting outside. It could be sending encouraging notes to somebody. It could be running some sort of, let me say that differently. It could be planning your schedule, like setting up time where you literally block time for whatever it is you need for you once a week. So you can fill that time with whatever you most need, whether that is on some days, maybe it's getting your hair done, maybe it's getting your nails done, maybe it's getting a massage, maybe it is going on a road trip, but actually blocking time to have a date with yourself is super important. So develop self-care practices that bring some level of stability to maybe a life that can at times feel out of control. That is so, so important to make sure that you stay in balance. And then also connect to your vision, right? Who are you? God formed, shaped, and anointed you for such a time as this. And why did he do that? Get really clear on who God says you are. Get really clear on the desires that God put in your heart and taking step towards those every day. So for example, even if you're married, even if you have kids, you were somebody before that happened and you're still somebody now. So who is that somebody, right? Like what are the unique gifts that you have? What is your unique voice? What is your unique approach to providing solutions to the world? What do you have expertise in that other people may not, right? Like, why are you here? Like God said that the world needed you for such a time as this. Why is that? And how can you start showing up in that? Because that brings a certain level of upliftment to your life when you can really be operating your purpose and your call. So those are things that you can be doing to age gracefully. You don't want to just be going through the motions every day. You don't want to just be getting by. You want to live with some pep in your step, okay? So that's number 2. That was kind of a combined thing. The next one is get your emotions under control. Women can very much be emotional beings, right? And we all are, but a lot of times women can be overly emotional because we have a lot that we carry, right? And a lot that we multitask, okay? So here's the thing though, a woman without emotional control will be managed. A woman without emotional control will be managed. And I don't know about you, but being managed in any kind of relationship is dysfunctional. It is unhealthy, and it will just lead to a lot of toxicity in your life, which you do not want, right? So self-control is really the ability to pull yourself in order, okay? Pull yourself into order. So when you know that you're starting to get out of line, you're able to pull yourself back into order. Or when you know that you would just love to react to this situation or just speak your mind or type your mind or send your mind out to somebody, you can pull back and restrain yourself from doing that. And you can give it 24 hours and then respond, right? When emotions subside, then you can decide, right? That's self-control. You're not just going to let the moment get the best of you. You're not just going to speak your mind and then express all these words that you can't take back, right? You're going to exercise self-control. And that's something that you can practice every day. I actually call it integrity momentum. It's really building simple disciplines that you can create small wins with every day. So it could be something as simple as getting up and not hitting snooze. Like you literally get up when the alarm goes off. You don't hit snooze, you get up. It could be setting out workout clothes and putting them on first thing and going out and working out the first thing when you get up so that you don't keep putting it off and you don't let that be something that is a broken promise. Or you're eating clean. So something to help yourself is you remove a lot of snacky things like chips and things that are nutrient less versus nutrient dense from your home so that you're not even tempted to cheat on it, right? Or you give yourself a budget for spending on food each week and you don't go outside of that budget. And maybe you only spent so much at the grocery store so that you can actually treat yourself on a Friday or Saturday night, but you actually set these disciplines so that you can get stronger in self-control so that when a temptation comes up, you will take the way of escape because God always provides a way of escape. But self-control and discipline will allow you to be able to be like, nope, I'm going to do this instead, right? So getting your emotions under control is very, very important. Sometimes you might need some talk therapy. Sometimes you might benefit from working with a coach. Sometimes you might benefit from taking a course in emotional intelligence and communication skills and just really learning these things that maybe you didn't get. Maybe you just developed a lot of bad habits because what you were raised to see and what you were exposed to. But that, again, is not an excuse. Even if you have those bad habits, at the end of the day, that's on you to clean up, okay? So getting your emotions under control is super, super important, because a woman without emotional control will be managed. There's a lot of predators out in the world that look for that. They prey on that because that is something that is easily controlled and managed and manipulated. And don't let that be you. Okay, next. So the next one is energy. Energy. And this is like an interesting word, but you've seen this. So for example, and I know this to be true, I really had to work on these things. I was way more comfortable operating in masculine energy than in feminine energy. And what do I mean by that? I was way more comfortable being active, getting things done, making things happen, providing, being self-reliant, like going out and getting it, taking risks, like doing stuff. Like I was way more comfortable in that than the surrender and the trust and the faith and the being still and the being calm and the being present and praying and journaling and writing and doing, I don't know, visualizations and relaxation. I mean, it took me probably like 30 some years of my life to start like actively enjoying taking baths, for example. Like I wouldn't even do it. I had to as a kid. And then for many of my adult years, I just never took them. I was like, no, shower, right? Like I ain't got time to sit in the tub. Like who does that, right? Or even these practices of journaling every day. I didn't think that I had time to do that. There were so many other things that I just had to get done, right? So like really learning how to balance these energies and really seeing how out of alignment that I was really important. So for example, it shows up too, even in exercise. Like I would rather just do like the weightlifting things and skip the stretch. But the stretch is where it's at, man. And you can do so much more when you actually stretch and you take care of your body, or you actually take a rest day. But I was so about the doing that I was just always in masculine mode. And I really started to notice this in relationships in particular, when I didn't really allow people to do things for me. I didn't ask for help. I wasn't always sharing what I wanted or what I needed. I just did things for myself. Like I just operated like I didn't need anyone in my life. And that became very difficult in relationship, right? So that's where I really had to recognize that in myself and start working on that. So that's just some examples, but we really need to stop and process our energy and how we're showing up, because we really teach people how to treat us. We teach people what's okay and what's not okay by how we show up and by the energy that we bring to the table. So are you somebody that's always pulling back? Are you somebody that's always the one doing things? Like, where can you stop and process just relationships and opportunities that you have in your life so that you can start making adjustments and get different outcomes? Because you're just going to get more of the same if you don't manage your energy. And it's really important as a woman, a lot of things, and I know this to be true, a lot of beautiful things just come from operating in your feminine side. So for example, creativity is very feminine, right? There's a part of it that's the masculine, like the organizing, the planning, the getting it done, the taking the actions. But sometimes creativity and like creative downloads and the flow is all very feminine energy. So you've got to get comfortable in both and know how to ebb and flow and what role to really activate as it's needed, right? And when to pull back and let somebody else step in, let somebody help you, let somebody lead. Like that's really, really important. If you're somebody that's always the one doing that, it's really important to learn your opposite so that you can really get a different level of balance. Contrast is good, right? And you can really find how to play off people's strengths and have a totally different sense of well-being. Okay, so that's really, really important. And then lastly is we really do reap what we sow. The word says if you sow unto the flesh, right, you're basically going to get a harvest, a fleshly harvest. If you sow unto the spirit, you're going to get a spiritual harvest. So this really has to do with our decisions, with our choices, with what we choose to activate, with what we choose to mix and sow into different situations. So if we sow discourse, we're going to get it. If we sow fear and doubt and insecurity and anxiety and jealousy and like nasty stuff, like that's going to come back, right? Or if we sow into the Spirit, right? And fruit of the Spirit's a really great example. If we're sowing patience, if we're sowing meekness, if we're sowing, what else? Faithfulness. If we're sowing, what's another good one? Love. Those things are going to come back to us too. So it's really, really important. If you're tired of getting outcomes that are just very surface level, that are just immediate, instant pleasure kind of things, and you really want the deeper things, you really want to be aligned and attuned with your spirit, it comes with what you're being led by. What is the motive, right? Like a really great example is sometimes we get in relationships according to our flesh. The Spirit wasn't in there at all, right? Like God never led us into that relationship, but we chose it. And we had all the red flags because God is faithful in showing us that stuff, right? But we kept going according to our flesh, my way, my thoughts, my desires, right? Versus going according to the Spirit, wisdom, patience, peace, right? Pleasantness, goodness, mercy, self-control, like all of these things versus living onto this. We live into this and we keep getting these same situations and outcomes. And once that becomes really frustrating, you'll start being enticed to learn another way, right? A way that leads to freedom. There's a way that looks right to us, but in the end is destruction. That's what the world too will say and will demonstrate, right? But if you want to go the path of life and of freedom, and you really want to be in a safe place, right? Meaning you've got God's protection on this, right? That is led by the Spirit. So how can you start making choices that are led by your spirit and not by your flesh? Because that will really determine the outcomes that you're going to get, right? And then who do you want to associate with? Do you want to look more like the world, or do you want to look more like God? We are created in His image and His likeness, but are you practicing that, right? You could have, right, the very nature of God, the seed of God in you, right? Holy Spirit could be dwelling in you, but you might not be activating that at all. So possible, right? So really, really important to pay attention to what you are sowing. So just a recap, these are all things to consider when you consider independence, right? What is independence worth to you? What does it mean to you? How do you measure it, right? Because if you can't measure it, you can't really see how you're doing. So here's some ways to gauge where you're at as it comes to independence. And this is specifically or particularly for women. First is your money. Are you with someone, or are you counting on somebody else to manage your finances? Think about that. You really want to be aware, knowledgeable, a good steward of your income, of your stewardship of your income, and also a multiplier of your income. And it's God that gives you the power to get wealth and to help you with these things. And if you make somebody else an idol in that way, you're going to get off balance big time. So that is something that you don't want to connect to somebody for. You don't want to connect to somebody out of insecurity, because you will sow that and you will reap that. And that will never get resolved. And you are going to be under somebody else's control. And that is not freedom at all. So money. Next is age gracefully. And there was a couple of ways to do that. Renewing your mind, developing self-care practices that you practice every day, and just start getting these wins so that you can build integrity and really connect with your vision in some way every day. Like, it is not random that you're here. God has a purpose and a plan for you, but are you tapped into that? And if you are just going through the motions and settling for mediocrity, you are not tapped into that. So tap into that, because that will help you to wake up with a different level of enthusiasm for sure. When you are driven by purpose, you don't just go through the motions, even on off days, okay? Next one is, keep in mind, a woman without emotional control will be managed. So self-control. Develop discipline and self-control, the ability, the capacity to pull yourself into order, to stop being emotional, to stop having these breakdowns, to stop reacting to stuff that really isn't worthy of your reaction, to stop giving airtime to things that don't need to have airtime, right? Like, think about a movie, right? Like, you don't need to digest some content. Like, don't give it life. You don't have to. You only give it life when you give it your attention. So focus on what it actually is that you do want, right? Pull that back in. Decide that I'm not just going to be a distracted, reactive, emotional, hot freaking mess. Like, I'm going to get myself together. I'm going to learn to pull myself in order. And that's not going to be somebody else's job. And I'm not just going to project my mess onto other people. I am going to get it together because I am radically responsible for me, and somebody else is not going to manage me. I'm not here to be managed, right? Okay, so that's number 3. Next one is energy, and really paying attention to being a good partner, whether that's in relationship with God, whether that's in relationship with other people in your life, whether that's a part of a team that you're on. Really, really take a look and just dissect the energy that you're bringing to the table. Are you always in like masculine mode? Are you working in some of your feminine energy too? Like, where are you at? Are you always driving, or can you allow for some flow? Like, where are you so that you don't drive yourself straight out of alignment, right? Like, how can you live from a place of alignment, which does have an ebb and flow to it? It's not just one way or the highway or the, I don't know what that saying is. Oh my goodness. Hopefully you got it. But it's not just like my way or no way, my way or the highway, whatever that is, right? You really want to be able to stop and process often what you're operating in, particularly if you keep getting outcomes that you don't like. Okay. And then lastly is I don't know what number this is. 4. I think it was actually 4 because some of these were combined. So the last one is sowing. Pay attention to what you sow. If you sow according to the flesh, you're going to get a harvest of the flesh. If you sow according to the spirit, you're going to get a harvest of the spirit, right? So what are you really motivated by? What are you driven by? What is really, really important to you? What motivates you? What characterizes you? What drives you? What would you die for? Right? What is your legacy about? Like, really ask yourself these deep, profound questions, because the clearer you are, the easier it is to show up in that. So really decide, what do I want more of in my life? Do I want to look more and more like the world every day, or do I want to be in the world and not of it? And if the latter is true, then how do I develop a kingdom mindset? Then how do I operate more according to the spirit and not my flesh? What am I going to put? What controls am I going to put in my life to help maintain this standard that I'm after, to help me stay in what I value, to help me represent God and myself well in how I show up and in what I do, right? There's a great verse, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be good and pleasing in your sight. Say it often, because I'm not wise enough to know what that looks like every day, right? I'm not perfect enough, right? Like, we're like, our greatest efforts are kind of like filthy rags, right? The word says that too. So it's like, apart from God, I can do no good thing. And apart from God, I am nothing. So think about that. And how can I really partner with God to get different outcomes in my life? Like, do I want just a human life, or do I want a supernatural life? That's really what it comes down to. And this all requires your independence. It requires looking at the God in you, not just introspective, like the you in you, looking at the God in you, really taking a look at your mental capacity, taking a look at your emotional capacity and your emotional well-being, taking a look at what's going on in your heart, taking a look at what you're sowing and how you're behaving in the world, and being accountable for that and responsible for that, right? And it's responsibility. Oh my gosh, I heard something so cool. I think it was this past weekend in a class that I was in. I used to always define responsibility as our ability to respond, which felt really, really good, because growing up, responsibility felt like a weighty word, because I had false responsibility, meaning I took on other people's responsibility. So I kind of resisted responsibility. I'm like, no more, it's too much, right? But I heard this past weekend that responsibility is our response to God's ability. And I'm like, yes, like, how do I train myself to be more responsive to God's ability, right? Like, this isn't about me making this happen, right? This is me trusting that God already had a solution before I ever had a problem. This is me trusting that God is my provider. This is me trusting that out of nothing and out of no way, God will make a way. This is me trusting that faith is better than all of my works, right? This is me trusting that God is a good God and he's a good father, right? So a very, very different way of showing up. And we all have work to do to really clean up what we think our independence is, so that we can truly model that in a very whole and all-encompassing and healthy way for others, and be examples for others by being radically responsible of ourselves, but also taking the burden off of other people to make that happen for us, right? Like, that would be the worst thing, feeling like you're going in the world being a burden to somebody, right? Like, that's an awful feeling, and that's not God's plan for you, and that's definitely not his best for you. So that's a little spin on independence. I hope that it blessed you, gave you some things to think about, gave you some things to work on. If you're a note taker, I recommend it. It really is a great way to not only just receive, but make it practical for you. So for example, like, which one of those did you really highlight? Maybe it was the self-care one. Okay, what are 3 self-care practices that you can implement? Go schedule them in your calendar and start doing it. And then even get an app or set notifications on your phone and start tracking your progress. Like, be committed to it. Or emotional control, like, do a journal exercise on that. What do I need to do to get a better handle on my emotions? Like, I notice that I'm very reactive. How can I be more responsive in life? Like, maybe I need to order a book right now on Amazon on emotional intelligence, or maybe there's a small group that I can get into. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, how can you make these practical for you? Or maybe with the energy, you can get feedback from people. So I'm doing this project. You can frame it in whatever way you want to get the feedback, but you could say, so I'm doing this project, and your feedback would really be helpful. I'm curious, from your perspective, how do I show up? Am I really operating out of masculine energy, or do you perceive me as more feminine? Like, what's your feedback? What do you have for me? I really want to be more responsible of how I steward my energy, right? And see what feedback you get from those that are closest to you, and take it with a grain of salt, right? Like, they're only receiving what you share with them. So keep that in mind too. But you get what I'm saying. Even if it's your spirit, like, maybe there's a devotional or something that you can get to really work on to think more kingdom minded, right? Like, I put myself in a 3-year ministry school because I wasn't given that training. So after all the education that I've had, I'm like, but I don't have this. And I crave this. I desire this. This is what I need for my soul, right? So keep that in mind. But at any rate, you get the point. I hope this message blessed you guys. If it did, make sure that you subscribe. You can also get a lot of great tools and resources I have right in front of me now. The God's Vibes Matter devotional. This is a really great way to grow in your devotion and in your practice with God, your quiet time practice every day, and just start building a relationship with God, like square one, right? Or just reestablishing your relationship with God. There is a self-mastery course over there to talk about self-control and emotional control. Really helpful course for you. There are coaching packages over there. I have a program called Spiritual CEO. Oh my goodness. I just compiled so many helpful tools that I've invested thousands of dollars over the years to really work through. And it's a really, really great course. It's 3 months and it's a really great program. So all of that you can find over on julianapage.com. If you haven't listened, I also host a podcast on Saturdays called Spirit Filled Real Talk with Juliana. I'm going to put all of this in the caption below, so you can click on it and find all of that. And you can also follow me. I'm usually most active on Instagram at Miss Juliana Page. All right, guys, until